Hello internet and welcome to my car channel. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on changing the brakes on this beautiful Volkswagen Passat right here with an e-brake. The goal for this video is to do a quick and easy demonstration on what things you need and how to do them, so you can easily perform changing of your front and rear brakes at home. So when you have loosened all the wheels, then you can start by jacking the car up. I'm using the original jack, and the jacking point of this car is in the front in the sill here. And I also want to use these jack stands just because we're on soil and I want the car to not budge around. Remove the wheel. A top tip is to put the wheel under the car, so if it was to fall down, it won't squeeze you. So here we have the brakes, and before we do anything I will start by loosening the set screw here, and then we will remove the caliper. So this screw, this can be really difficult to remove sometimes. It may sit really hard. It's just a set screw, so you could just drill it out if you need to. So now we have access to the Amarok, which is H7 in here. So this is H7. And there is one in the top and one at the bottom. Now we're going to remove the spring here. And now everything is basically loose, and you can start by prying off the caliper. And you should leave this hose here without any strain, so just put it somewhere it won't hang. And now we can also just remove these worn plates here, and we will need to remove this claw here to get the brake disc off. All you need is just a 21mm socket and a really strong leverage arm, and it will go off easily. So after loosening those two bolts, we have loosened the brake disc and the brake holder right here, and then we just need to clean everything. So we're going to clean the surface, and we want to clean the surface here where the pads are going to slide on. Take the gliding bolts and prepare them with a new surface and some new grease. So now we just need to push in the piston before we can start assembling everything. I'm using this piston tool, but you could also just use a really large wrench to do this, especially on the front, because you just need to push the piston in. And then it's all the way in. There's only one thing that you need to look out for, and that is that this rubber band here is well folded like it is right now actually. Sometimes it will not, and then you just put the screwdriver in here and lift it up a little bit to leave in some air. Use some brake cleaner on the new brakes to get off the oil. Now everything is finally lubed up. We have the bolts and the mounting surface to the brake disc, and we also have the brake pads. So now we will just start by mounting on the brake disc, attach it with the set screw, then we will start putting on the claw and the brake pads. There's no need to tighten this too much, it's only there to hold the brake disc in place when you are doing the mounting of all the other stuff. I'm going to use a tiny bit of Loctite on this. Alright, so now I tighten the bolts to the clave here. Of course, use a long arm, don't use just this one, you will not get enough force with this. So now it's time to mount on the brake pads. One of these have a sensor, but that's on the other side. You can see the sensor is sitting on this pad. Turn it around. Take a new pad. So now this one is on, and we only need to get in these gliding bolts, which are now very lubed up. These should not sit too tight, so just use hand force. Of course you should always use proper moment, but I'm a mechanic, so I know what to do. So now it's time to put on the spring. This can be a little bit fiddly. I would suggest just putting it in one hole here and then inserting the other one. Just using a screwdriver should be enough. And then clip it around. Of course, remember to put this back on. There we go, one side done. On this side it's the exact same process, except we have this brake pad indicator here. So, and then we just put this together, and then we just squeeze it in here. So there you have it, the front brakes are disassembled and assembled, and if you're only changing the front brakes, then you just have to remember to push the brake pedal before you drive the car, and also remember to check the fluid level so you don't top it over when you're pushing in the pistons. And now we're going to check out the rear brakes and how you replace those. Alright, so the wheel is off. We have the same problem here, it's a set screw, we just remove that one, you know how now. And then we have, well, it's sort of difficult to see here, but it's a 13mm and a 15mm. So just take two wrenches like this and loosen them. So a top tip on how to loosen this, just put on the 13mm in the back here and the 15mm like this. Now we can just squeeze together and whips, it's off. Now we just have to wrench this one out. And there's also another one at the bottom, of course. So now we have removed the two bolts in the top here, and we can just pry off the caliper. Remember to take the e-brake off, because it's an electric brake. We will come back to this one later. Take off the braking pads. And these ones, braking gliders, we're going to probably replace them. Just a firm hit to the brake pad on the side here. It will come loose. Good. Now I just have to remove the claw here as well. So now over to the most difficult part of the changing the rear brakes, and that is to get this, which is a 14mm XZN, into this one right here. Oh, that's not the difficult part, but you also have to get enough leverage to actually loosen this bolt, which can sit very hard. Now luckily I'm super strong and it loosens very easily. So as you can see, there is also another one of these bolts down here. It's also difficult to get to, but it needs this extension and then you're good. It helps a lot to have a long arm. If you've gotten it loose, it's smart to just change over to a regular wrench, which is smaller, and it comes out quite easily. So, when both of those two bolts are out, and they have this very weird head like this, then the brake disc will come out, and this one. And now the challenge is the brake motor right here, which I will show you a little tip on. So there's a tiny little connector here. The tip on this one is just to use a small screwdriver, push it down, and it should, in theory, come loose. There we go. If you can see inside here, there are two terminals, and we want to take minus and plus to each one of them, and then the engine will turn the piston in or out depending on which one is minus or plus. So we'll just try one configuration, and if it turns out, then we will of course stop immediately, and if it turns in, then we're good. And I always start by just lubing up this rubber here. Okay, so we're going to turn in the piston right now. So I'm using this separate battery, and I have two wires, the plus and minus here. And as I mentioned, there's the two terminals in here. I just take it, and I already tried, so I know it will go in now. So if you watch now on the piston, it will not move. So the piston is not moving, but you can hear the engine working. And now it stopped. That means that the piston is all the way in. And usually some of these pistons, they need to rotate in here, they need to rotate around. But this one is just like the front one, you only need to push it in. So I'm not going to use any teeth on this one, I'm just going to use a regular plate. But that's something you need to know on the car you're working on. It's separate, it's different for each model, so you need to know. On most Volkswagen cars, it's just push in, but some are also turn in. Usually the piston is slightly hard to take in, but shouldn't be too hard. A little top tip is to use a wrench like this, so you can get a longer arm. It's much easier to rotate that way. Now we know it's all the way in when it stops turning. So the piston is in and the mounting surface to the brake disc is also greased up. We also have some new grease on these gliding pins, which is important. So now we only need to put on the brake disc. So the brake discs are in place using the set screw. Do not over tighten it, it's just there to make assembly easier. And now you can put on the claw here, which is mounted again with this very large bolt that are a little bit difficult to get in. So now this claw are in place and the two large bolts are tightened down. And now, before we do anything, we should reconnect this wire, which is right here, to the engine. And now it's just to put on these sliding pins for the brake pads. And here we have some finished brake pads, just a tiny bit of grease on the edge here. You just need to thread them into these metal plates. So you just need to get these ears into the sliding position here. And now it's on. And then it's just to take on the caliper and install some new bolts. Do not over tighten this, just make them tight. And now the rear brakes are done as well. The front brakes and the rear brakes are changed. And the challenge here is really just the electric engine and the two large bolts on the other side. Remember, before you do anything, push the pedal and check the brake fluid. If you don't know how to check your braking fluid, well, on this car it's right here. And I took some paper in it because we have pushed in the pistons, and as I said, the oil level has risen. So now I've just taken out so it's to the proper amount. And with that, I would like to end my tutorial on how to change the front and the rear brakes on this Volkswagen Passat. I hope you learned something and will be more prepared to change the brakes on your car. And if you like this car stuff, go out and check my channel on YouTube. And as always, like, comment and subscribe. I will see you next time in my next episode.